Welcome to the Adapted Ambitions podcast. Here we rewrite the rules of success for professional women over 40. This is the place where experience meets reinvention and where we tackle bold career moves, inspiring pivots, and strategies to help you create a career and life that you truly love. My name is Ada Offonry. I am a talent leader and career coach with years of experience partnering with professionals at pivotal career crossroads. I've seen it all, from climbing the corporate ladder to leaping off it entirely, and I'm here to help you figure out your next big move. Because let's be honest, the so-called career rules we grew up with, they're really outdated. Your experience isn't just valuable, it's actually your superpower. So I'll show you exactly how to use the superpower to create your best chapter yet. Whether you're thinking about a career change, launching your own business, or you just want more purpose and balance in your work, you're in the right place. Welcome to Adapted Ambitions. Let's dive in. Welcome to today's episode of the Adapted Ambitions podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be speaking about accessing the hidden job market in mid-career. Now, let's kind of take a few steps back and look at the job market in general. Now, if you're looking for a job, it's pretty straightforward if you're in a candidate-driven market, which is when there are more jobs than there are people. And so companies are willing to do whatever they can in order to attract talent. And as a job seeker in that sort of market, you're really in a position of power. So a good period to think about when the job market was candidate driven was during the pandemic. Companies were literally dishing out offers and people could find jobs really easily during the pandemic. You could also be in a market that is candidate driven depending on your skill sets. If these are skill sets that are highly sought after, regardless of what's happening in the broader economy. So an example in today's market would be the market for machine learning engineers and researchers. A lot of different companies are seeking that skill set. And so if you have a skill set as a machine learning engineer or machine learning researcher, you're probably not going to struggle to generate a number of really strong offers. The market is also really straightforward if you're sort of early to mid-career with very clear prerequisites for the sort of jobs that you're after. So, an example would be that if you're interested in working in an investment bank and you go to, a top 5 university and study subjects like economics or computer science. To be fair, you could study any subject as long as you go to a top university and have really good grades. Then you can pretty much make your way into one of the graduate trainee schemes at the top investment banks. So if you're in that kind of position in your career, the job market is relatively straightforward. Now, it becomes more complicated if, for example, you're pivoting to a different type of role where you might not necessarily have all the clear prerequisites. You might have the individual attributes that make you successful in the new job or new type of career that you're after. You might have transferable skills that you could be utilized there. But if you don't have the prerequisites, you might have to look a bit harder and work a bit harder to be able to sort of get yourself into a position where you're being considered for open roles far and above people with, clear prerequisites for the sort of jobs that you're after. It's also more complicated in the job market if it's a client or company-driven market. So this is where there are more people than there are jobs available. So for each job you apply for, there's significantly more competition, and companies can basically pick and choose who they go after. And typically you find that the processes are a bit more selective and salary might not be as competitive during those times. So an example of that would be at this specific point in time in the market, people have reduced their staff. It's a bit more challenging to find jobs in the market. So you find that from time to time in sort of the broader economy due to macroeconomic forces, but also you might find specific trends within industries driving that. The market is also a little bit more complicated if you're more experienced and or if you're going after leadership roles, because there are typically less of these roles available. And also, as a professional, you're definitely much more expensive at this point. And particularly if you're in a leadership role, hiring you will impact many other people. And so a lot of people find that, one, there are less opportunities at a more experienced and senior level in the market more generally. And that if you do kind of come across these opportunities, it's often much harder to secure the offer. So that's really where I want to focus our time today, which is how mid-career professionals can access the hidden job market. Because the answer to this is really looking at the hidden job market. What a lot of people aren't aware of is that by the time you see jobs advertised online, these are the jobs that have really already gone through the hidden job market, and the companies weren't able to hire people through their hidden channels. And so you're now sort of getting the remnants of what's available out there. And there are multiple sort of data sources on this, but generally you'll find that data sources point to about 70% of open roles being filled through the hidden job channels before it comes out in the public domain. So if you're entirely reliant on jobs advertised on the job boards for your job search, then think about it. You're missing out on about 70% of potential opportunities. And so let's really talk about what that looks like. So what do we mean when we talk about the hidden job market? Well, there are a number of things we're talking about here. So one is looking at referrals. So this is when you're referred to companies that are hiring, word of mouth. It could be direct approaches as well. So basically anything that is not on the job, the sort of standard job boards. So let's look a little bit at the process when a company sort of opens up a role. So oftentimes when a company opens up a role, they'll reach out to their employees to see if they have referrals. So that's one opportunity for you to access the hidden job market. They may also reach out to agencies that they have relationships with to help them find people. It's typically after they've explored these avenues that they may begin to think about posting the job more publicly. They'll also sort of reach out to their network. So oftentimes they'll have companies that are vendors or clients, etc., to be able to see if they can have access to the sort of people that they're after. If you have a prior relationship with a company and you're known to them in some capacity, that's also your opportunity to sort of tap into the network. So this will usually happen at the start of a search, and oftentimes where candidates coming through these processes, more often than not, they tend to be expedited through the process. And it's only after exploring all of those avenues, if the candidate isn't found, that's when the role sort of gets put into the public domain. So if you find yourself in mid-career sort of on the job market and kind of struggling to secure interviews, there are a few things you could do to optimize your chances of being able to tap into the hidden job market. The first is really to be able to leverage your network. A lot of your key job opportunities will not only come from your first degree connections, they'll actually come from your second and third degree connections. Also, the sort of, relationship point on avenues such as LinkedIn can be a bit more tenuous than, say, if you were connecting with somebody on other social media platforms. If you've met someone at a conference, for example, you can connect on LinkedIn. You don't have to be best friends for you to connect on LinkedIn. And so whenever I'm speaking to people who are saying to me, look, Ada, I haven't really built up a network. I don't really know where to start to be able to leverage my network, I often say to them, write down your colleagues from previous companies and your current company, particularly those that have moved on. And then think about your friendships, think about the other networks that you're part of. For example, if you're part of a gym, part of a religious institution, maybe you have a number of hobbies, you volunteer somewhere, those people are all part of your network. So what you want to do is to ensure that you're connected to all of these people on LinkedIn and you're touching base with all of these people from time to time as much as you can. The best time to build your network is often when you're not looking. And this is the challenging bit for a lot of people, because what a lot of people tend to do is when people aren't looking for a job, they become so myopic and focused on their job. They don't really put any sort of investment into their network. And so that sort of relationship becomes a bit more transactional, because it's only when you find yourself in a position when you're looking for a job that you want to reach out to those people. And I often say to people, what if you didn't go from like 0 to 100 where you're constantly reaching out to people, because that does take a lot of time and that can be draining. I get that. But what if you went from 0 to say 10%, 20%? So you reach out from time to time. If people are sharing stuff on LinkedIn, interact with it, maybe be proactive about going for a monthly coffee with someone in your network, etc. The thing about networking, particularly if you're somebody who doesn't really vibe with the transactional nature of networking when it comes to your career, is you definitely want to build a relationship when you're not looking for anything. I think for a lot of people, it means that that connection can be authentic. You can exchange information about the market. You can be explicit about the fact that you just want to build a connection and you just kind of want to check in. So that's definitely something to be mindful of. The second thing I'd say, and oftentimes when I mention this, people roll their eyes, so do bear with me, is you've got to really try to find a couple of headhunters or recruiters that you can build a good relationship with. Now, I get it. There are a lot of recruiters on the market that just want to kind of extract information from you and then don't sort of back it up with relevant opportunities in the market. And that's extremely frustrating. But what you'll find is that in the market, there'll be a few companies that have a really solid reputation in the market. There'll be a few recruiters that really have solid knowledge of the market and have a solid reputation. And I think if you can identify these, it's worth your while staying in touch with a couple of them. Because what you'll find is that they'll have you in mind. They might reach out to you from time to time, particularly if they sit within your specific niche. And if there are then opportunities that a client is thinking about or that have just come out into the market, then you'll be one of the first calls that they make. And so you want to put yourself in that position. What a lot of people tend to do is they don't want to interact with recruiters whatsoever. And then when they sort of are looking, it becomes a sort of a necessary evil to speak to recruiters. And the relationship is one that is very transactional and there's a lack of trust. And so you want to put yourself in a position where there are one or two, you don't need too many, but there are one or two people that you can really kind of speak to from time to time, touch base, discuss the market, have a sense of what's going out there. Even when you're not actively looking, when you're beginning to think about it, you can put the feelers out there through recruiters. You know, I have many friends that have these sort of relationships with recruiters, and from time to time, they'll come to me saying, oh, you know, I've been approached about this opportunity. What are your thoughts about XYZ? And so it helps you to really have your pulse on the market. And if nothing, so that you can benchmark your current position relative to the overall market. So far, we've gone through one, building your sort of organic network, and the second is maintaining relationships with recruiters. There's a lot more that you can also do to access the hidden job market. The key one here is building your brand. This is a hard one for many people because I think if you're mid-career or you're in midlife, a lot of people tend to sort of take pride in the fact that they don't really interact much with social media and tend to be quite suspicious about the merits of social media. And listen, social media has its pros and cons, right? And I think that that's quite clear for everyone to see. However, if you're not doing anything to proactively build your brand, then it means that you're reliant on the internet and the rest of the market to make that assessment for you. The reality is that for a lot of people, the image is already formed about who you are before you step into the room. Your CV and your resume isn't sufficient to form a solid impression of who you are. It really helps if you have some form of a profile on LinkedIn or other areas that can enhance your brand. And if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily like content creation, you know, part of building your brand could be, for example, within industry networks as well. So it doesn't all have to be online, but you can't ignore the impact that building a brand online has on your ability to secure a position. So oftentimes I'll have people saying to me, once they've been very sort of intentional about building a profile for themselves online, and this is a two-way street. This is about creating your own content, but also interaction with others. A lot of people, once they've had the opportunity to do this, even for a short period, like 3 to 6 months, they'll say to me that they have opportunities coming to them. It raises your visibility amongst the people who you want to take notice of you, mainly prospective employers and recruiters. It also kind of puts you in prime position to be considered for positions, because in a world where some people haven't taken the time to build their brand and you have, in a very competitive market, kind of going back to what we said earlier about a company-driven market, it really puts you in a stronger position. So oftentimes, for example, I myself have been approached by opportunities that I didn't know existed, mainly because of the profile that I'd built for myself on LinkedIn. And I can tell you many other stories of where this has also happened for people. So if you're somebody who isn't taking the time to do that, even a minimal lift, doing something online, particularly LinkedIn, if you're a professional, once or twice a week could really be a difference maker when it comes to raising your profile and increasing your visibility amongst the right people for the sort of jobs that you're after. And finally, you just have to be very, 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 very proactive, right? So you've got to be somebody who is putting yourself out there in your industry networks, putting yourself out there in terms of reaching out to people in the companies that you're interested in order to uncover the hidden job opportunities. When people start doing this, they often find that they might not necessarily have hit upon the right opportunity at the right time. But if you do this consistently enough, then you'll sort of be ahead of the curve when something is coming down the line, and so you can be considered for that. So if I were to pull all of this together into actionable sort of takeaways, I'd say first thing to do, if you find yourself in a position as a mid-career professional where you're looking for a new job, or if you think you might be looking over the next year, first thing I'd do is refresh your LinkedIn profile and start engaging actively. And maybe for you, engaging actively after not having engaged on LinkedIn for a few years might be once a week. Start there and then build up. The second thing I'd say is identify 3 to 5 people in your network that you can connect with this week. So maybe you can send them an article that you read that you thought they'd be interested in, respond to something that they've put up on LinkedIn themselves, or, reach out and ask to have a Zoom call or go for a coffee. And then the last thing I'd say is draft yourself a short pitch which summarizes your expertise and your job search or career pivot goals, so that you can speak about this very easily if you're to come across a recruiter or other people in your industry to kind of start proactively marketing yourself. So remember, the hidden job market isn't a secret society. It's really about showing up consistently, speaking up and positioning yourself for the opportunities that are out there. And it's also realizing that, you can be as proactive as you want, but you also have to kind of raise your visibility amongst the right people, amongst the right crowd and the right industry to be able to attract the sort of opportunities that are of interest to you, either now or in the future. So that's really what it's about. I hope today's episode has been helpful. If you are considering a job search or a career pivot, I would say to begin to work on doing some of the stuff I've talked about here so that you can enhance your chances of being able to tap into the hidden job market. Well, that's it for this week. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been valuable. As always, I'm open to your feedback and ideas of any episodes you would like me to cover in the future. In the meantime, take care and see you next time.